About 6 months ago, I had this epiphany that the primary thing in the way of my making movies is me. It's me just deciding to do it and then engineering a way to do it. When that realization occurred to me, suddenly a flood of ideas, of possibilities came to me. From short films to feature-length movies to a bunch of almost parody commercial ideas. Basically, what I need to do is I need to get better at my craft. And the only way to do that is to practice. And then I need to demonstrate that I have gotten better. And the only way to do that is to actually make stuff. So one of the ideas is a commercial. Technically, it's for the iPhone, but really it's for me. And the commercial is, there's a guy on a beach or a pier, and he is having trouble talking on his cell phone. At least that's what we think. But as we approach, we see that he's actually got a piece of crap in his hand, not a phone. And the phone and the commercial is basically, does your mobile experience stink? Maybe it's because you're using a piece of crap. Ditch that turd and get an iPhone. Be like Carl. Get an iPhone. Which means I have to make fake crap or buy it. Now, you can buy plastic turds all over the place. But when I was in college, I used to eat a lot of brownies, and I found that rolling them up put them in a form and a texture that I liked. But it resulted in the brownie looking like a piece of crap. So in preparation for this, I bought these from Costco. And now, since I'm shooting that commercial today with my nephew, because most of the actors I talked to wouldn't do it. Apparently they didn't want to be seen holding a piece of crap, or the potential legal problems that might come if Apple does a cease and desist letter or something like that. So anyway, this morning, I'm making the brownies. Does your mobile experience stink?
Can't hear you. Hello? 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 Can you hear me?
Maybe it's because you're using a piece of crap.
That's disgusting.
Ditch that turd. Get an iPhone. Carl got an iPhone. Be like Carl. I am currently reading an amazing book called Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, and I thought it would just be an amazing beginning, but it just stays awesome. It feels like the video game version of The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay, and I mean that in the best possible way, because that book was also awesome. Just in what it explores and how it opened my eyes a little bit more to the comic book world, which I wasn't super into as a kid, but that's not what this is about. This is about YouTube. This is about my ideas and the algorithm that governs whether you see my ideas and how those things interface as I continue to create more and more videos. My fear, my concern, the thing that has kept me off of YouTube, one was I was stuck in the idea that Hollywood was a good destination. I no longer believe that, and I don't want it anymore. I had this rant prepared for my thoughts on Hollywood, but I'm not going to talk about this right now because something has come up, and it didn't really feel like the energy I wanted to create when I was saying it, and it definitely isn't the right energy now. What I want to talk about is something I just journaled about and something that I've been journaling about, a sort of epiphany I had. And I say that word a lot because it feels like I'm in a constant state of epiphanies. This week's epiphany is about my intention, where I am now psychologically, the narratives that I tell myself versus the narratives that I used to tell myself, and their conflicts and the resolution and what's emerging as a result of that. Our brains are pattern recognition machines. They don't do much else. And their goal is to create a single unified narrative such that it can make sense of the input that we get by being alive and use that input to predict what's happening or what's going to happen such that we continue to be alive. If our brains do other things, that's not super clear yet. The narrative that I grew up with is the narrative that a man takes care of the house, that they provide the money, that they provide the income and support the family. They go to work each day at the giant corporation and they come back with money. And they have a house and they have a wife and they have 2 kids and a dog and a picket fence. It's called the American dream. It's not true, but that's what I was raised in. That's what my dad did, although he had 3 kids and several dogs and there was no white picket fence. It was, we lived in a rural area, so we lived on some 2 acres of land. A lot of movies and books and shows that are on TV and in the theater and etc. reiterate that story, that that's what a man does, that when it's difficult, that a man goes out and gets the job, that a man provides. And I don't do that. I exist in the creative space and income isn't as consistent as it might be for many. That's not my life. My life is that my wife and I choose to live very simply. She is a pediatric physical therapist and she makes enough money to keep us alive. We live simply in an apartment that's enough for us. It's not huge, it's 700 square feet, but we're happy here. I have this life that I live as a man, as someone presenting physically this way. The story that I was told, that I was raised with, doesn't agree with that narrative. And so in my brain, these narratives are battling.
I'm going to tell you about a dream I once had.
Last week I had a dream.
I know that's, when someone says that, that's usually you're in for a very boring next few minutes, and you might be.
And my dream was that I was in a lake. I saw a giant snake, an anaconda. I quickly got to the shore to warn my wife and my friend who were standing there. I couldn't move. I became frozen. I watched as the snake grabbed my wife and pulled her in, and I told my friend, grab the snake. Stop it. Keep her alive. And we couldn't, and she was taken under, and then I woke up. And I know that that dream is my brain surfacing that narrative such that I can deal with it rationally. A few days later, I was helping a friend out, helping him move some things, and he said, why don't you get a normal job, John? So again, the universe is like, hey, there's this story that you could be living into. And I, the universe, have shown you another way that's working for you, that you feel happier and more full and more alive in. Which narrative are you going to live by? And so I decided I'm going to live into creativity. I'm going to start a daily YouTube video series called You Are My Film School, meaning you, the audience, the person watching this, and YouTube's algorithm are my film school. I need to figure out how to make movies in a way that is entertaining, and you are the metric that's going to teach me how to do that. I'm going to do my thing, and you and the algorithm are going to talk to me, sharing with me what works, what doesn't, and I'm just going to keep sketching until there's a synchronicity between what I want to do and what you want. I don't know how to do that. I haven't been trained in doing that. I'm great at doing my own thing, but if it's just me doing it and no one watches it, I might as well do something else pleasurable, like take drugs or jerk off or go live in the desert by myself as a hermit. Or read books all day. I enjoy that too. The other realization is that I don't want to call it an addiction, because for me, an addiction is something that you do that gets in the way of your life. I had a habitual activity that didn't really get in the way of my life, but it made me feel bad. I kept returning to this activity. I kept doing it. Whenever I felt good, I would do it. Whenever I felt sad, I would do it. And even though when I was relatively sober-minded, even in a state of sadness, I would say, I don't want to do this thing. I was listening to the telepathy tapes and I had this insight. I was participating in that activity, not for the activity itself, although it is mildly pleasurable, but because I wanted chaos in my life. I told myself I was a fighter, that I was a struggler, that I was someone who found my being and my purpose in struggle. And so I kept manufacturing subconsciously a situation in which I would have to struggle more. Whenever I felt peace, whenever I felt free, I would be drawn back to this activity. When I had that realization, the activity suddenly lost its appeal, because my previous self might have defined myself as a fighter, as someone who's resisting, as I still consider myself an iconoclast, but not in the same way. I'm in dialogue with culture now. I'm not against culture. I don't disagree necessarily with, nor am I presenting the right path as some kind of commanding solution. That's not where I'm at anymore, man. So that's not what I'm doing. I see myself as a facilitator. I see us on those spirals, making progress. My hope is to facilitate those who are on that spiral. Again, the universe was like, do you really believe that, John? Is that really your goal? Or do you want 1 million people to watch? Yes, I want 1 million people to watch. But also, my friend Jesse said that he watched the vlog. He felt a connection to what I was going through, and that was meaningful to me. And so these narratives that I have in my mind, that society has told me I ought to be, ought to do, the way I ought to live, they are in conflict as I continue to grow as a human being. The old stories don't fit anymore, but they're still there. But they're fading away as I see them for what they are. Yesterday, a fairly prolific executive producer contacted me saying he found my IMDb page and wanted to see what I was working on. I responded, I listed all the projects that I'm working on, and then he responded, do you have anything about the feature film, Some Call It Luck? And I'm going to send him a deck, D-E-C-K, when I'm done recording this. I don't know what's going to come of it. My wife is concerned that it will just be another person from Hollywood trying to steal my good ideas. I'm hoping to be more savvy than that, but I'm not also going to not step toward that door simply because I'm afraid that this person might be like several others. I have to go where the door's open.
If I lean back, if I go with the flow, if I let the river take me, and I look around and I'm aware, that's where the magic happens. That's where the gifts come. And I don't know where I'm going, and I just have to trust and lean in.
And I want to have a conversation. There's a lot I don't know about distribution, about fundraising, about financing, and I would like to learn more about that. But I also have some ideas. And somewhere, this executive producer and I, if he's interested in working with me, will come to a synergy where both of our ideas can be explored fully in a single cohesive project.
Meanwhile, YouTube has built the best distribution platform on the planet by far. Last month, for the first time, they made a bigger profit than Disney did through all of their non-amusement park finances. And Disney was the largest. Bigger than Warner Brothers, bigger than Paramount, bigger than Universal, bigger than all of that, bigger than Netflix. YouTube beat them. On mobile devices, on the laptops, they've always been crushing those other places. But now it's on TVs too. People watch more YouTube on their television than they do anything else. Now, there is an argument to be made that a lot of that watching is in fact parents sitting their kids down in front of Lisa Sings. That's probably a lot of it. But that's not all of it, because people are gonna figure out ways to make real money on YouTube. Last week, I mentioned the Media Odyssey podcast, Evan Shapiro's podcast, and a guy they interviewed. I should link to it in the comments. He described how most creators are making maybe $4 to $10 CPM, meaning for every 1,000 views, the creator makes $4. I had a vision. I had a vision of a better future. I envisioned a world where movies could be freely distributed to everyone. I believe cinema to be the most powerful means of affecting meaningful social change that humans have invented to date. The most ethical one, anyway. But filmmaking is an empathy engine. I believe this strong enough to give my life to it as a vocation, and I value my life. So I don't say that lightly. When cinema is at its best, it is having important dialogue with society. The people for whom that is arguably most important can't afford subscriptions to Netflix, subscriptions to HBO, or anything like that. And so by having a subscription model, the streamers have excised the very people who need the medium of cinema as that social dialogue from participating in the social conversation. So I envisioned a reality where movies were free, but filmmakers, the people who actually make the movie, can make a reasonable living wage or a thriving wage or a lot of money. And I have a model that I'll talk about later that I am using for Go Gentle, and I used for Libertas, and I'll be using for every project going forward, and I used for Algorithm, where the people who make the movie make most of the money that the movie makes, as that should be the case. My vision was called YouTube Cinema. If YouTube created a platform where the minimum ad buy is $52 CPM, the returns would be extraordinary. And then the Ben guy on the Media Odyssey podcast said he's getting those numbers for people.
Right now, YouTube is generally considered an incubator for people to transition into other platforms like Hollywood, like Amazon. That's where they'll make most of their money. It doesn't have to be that way. And this guy, Ben, on the Media Odyssey podcast, talked about it's possible to make $50 CPM. Here's the thing. YouTube outsourced the CPM idea, the $50 CPM idea, to other people, and the other people haven't gotten it. I don't know how it's done. This guy Ben seems to get it. I don't get it. Nobody's talking about exactly how to do it, at least not publicly. And if they probably aren't doing it because they want to control it. YouTube has allowed people to have their own CRM, content resource management system, so that they can sell ads. It is ridiculously inferior to what they could do themselves. And because they've outsourced it, it means they're probably not going to build an in-house version. And because of that,
I have dreamed a dream.
the dream that I had is probably not going to happen.
But now that dream is gone from me.
I had that realization a couple of weeks ago, and it was a sad thing. It had me almost on the verge of crying because it is something that as a filmmaker, as someone who have given my life to this medium, it broke my heart.
Today in Go Gentle pre-production, it's about sending out contracts and making sure all of my gear is labeled correctly and making sure that everything I need in order to effectively capture Go Gentle. One of the things I had to do was buy an extra set of Rode Wireless Pro microphones, one of which I'm wearing right now, in order to get the audio. I only had 4 wireless lavaliers and I need 6 because there are 6 people all in dialogue, and either I capture the dialogue from one person and then have them switch mics and capture it from the other. That tends to not get consistent performances from the actors, so instead I just got a couple more. Also the contract. So this is one of, I did Algorithm under the SAG ultra low budget agreement, and it was fine. SAG's not super picky unless you have bigger budgets, and then they get kind of controlling. Go Gentle is the first time since then that I have done anything under the SAG agreements. This one is the micro budget agreement because the budget is, I told them, $1,300. One of the actors insisted on it being SAG. It turns out that 4 of the actors are actually SAG, so it's very helpful that this will be legal. I had to write up the profit share agreement. The profit share agreement is basically something that I came up with in order so that the artists get paid fairly, that the creatives who are responsible for creating the project, including me and the writer in this case, Matt Wallace, and the actors, that we end up making most of the money, which is how it ought to be. The way I determine that is something called day of days. So the way that works is that if one actor works one day and all actors work 5 days together, then that actor would get 20% of the share that the cast and crew gets. The share that the cast and crew gets is 50% of the budget. So the total that the one person would get would be 10% of all profits. Now, I still haven't figured out exactly how to make a profit on this. We're working on that. I have some ideas that I'm going to be clandestine about, right?
That's this week's vlog. I've gone on long enough. You'll see me next week, probably.